Thank you for everyone coming here, and I'm glad to see that everyone's still awake after such a nice lunch break. And thank you for the previous presentation. Lego was one of my favorites, and also I grew up with it. And also the presenter, like what Frost said, there was some truth in the joke. So we are good at copying, but we are also good at creating. And my name is Sammy Wong, and I'm the representative for Concept M Asia Pacific. And today I was supposed to have my co-speaker, Dirk Sims, but due to the last-minute change of plan, he couldn't make it, which is a great news for me to some extent, because whatever goes wrong, I blame him. Okay, so now, today we are going to talk about the e-commerce for China. And we are going to share some observations and insight that we collect through our study in the previous 2 to 3 years. When we think about the new innovation and concepts for the future of social media and e-commerce and digital business, immediately, I'm sure everyone think about Facebook, Instagram, Google, all these big global players. And also great inventions like Snapchat or even like Twitter's. They are very famous. Even, a lot of Chinese young consumers, they try to use the VPN to go across the firewall to try to get extra information on that. But what happened is, on the eBay and the Amazon, although they are actually quite popular in China, we have our own Silicon Valley. And we take a very bold assumption and a very different stance that we believe that today China is actually reinventing the e-commerce. And hey, that's the creation, right? Not just about copying. And Shenzhen is actually located near Hong Kong, a southern city. It's an immigration city. So you find a different kind of talents over there. Tencent and a lot of great IT companies that all base their headquarters over there. So it's an interesting map because that's a map of China, rooster. So as you can see, like with a different geographical location, we use different icons for internet usage. The e-commerce market is enormous in China. And Jack Ma, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with him, although he looks a bit like alien. And he's actually the father of the Gen Y that were born to e-commerce. Like I said, the Lego presentation paved a really good way because I grew up with Lego, my generation. But the Gen Y is actually growing up with the e-commerce. So basically what happened is we skip a few steps compared to what's normally happened in the West. So that will be the very stationary trading process. First of all, we have all our big chain stores. We have our shopping malls. And then the e-commerce emerged. And what happened is it began to view as a competition. And the third stage is the combination of e-commerce and the actual shopping mall. How amazing. It's fantastic. You cover it all. But in China, it's a bit different. We actually skipped the whole stationary trading and went straight from the actual shopping mall to the e-commerce platforms. And this kind of leap of faith that is taking to skip such an important process creates some kind of differences and split between the older Chinese generation and the younger Chinese generation, and we are talking about the Gen Y. Okay, now, when we look at the images, it's quite obvious, right? So on the left-hand side, we can see that the older generation still very much reluctant to change, and they're very much stuck with the very traditional way of shopping habits. Crowded, well, Chinese people, they like 热闹, they like crowd. And then on the other hand, on the right-hand side, where it's much more individualistic, and young generation, they prefer to actually glue to their handphones, like smartphones, and they like to spend a lot of time on their tablets and also on their laptop. Well, let me extend a little bit more on the older generation shopping habits. Have you ever been to China before, especially like Beijing and Shanghai? How many of you have been to? Okay, great, fantastic. What's your impression? People, right? So it's amazing how time-consuming and overwhelming it can be. But through our qualitative research and talk to all this older generation, what we find that there were few fun characteristics that they really enjoy the shopping in the physical form, which means going to malls and shopping and then markets, is that it's loud, it's crowded. And when they talk about the loud, the noisiness and the crowdedness, they got really excited. And then the feeling of being able to fight for an item, to quickly grab it, it's an amazing experience. They feel like they win a competition like at Olympics. And at the same time, we have that term that I just mentioned in Chinese is called 热闹, which means the atmosphere that filled with excitement and noises. And I'm sure that you guys, the Western guys, they will go to the Western shopping center and check it out. It looks all calm and peaceful and organized. But hey, please go to the wet market. And you will see people are actually shouting at each other's, over each other's shoulder. But actually, they were communicating. And they really enjoyed that progress. And it's a very exciting element for them to interact with each other. Oh, very different. The Gen Y shopping experience and process is much different. It's very much like a light and day difference. Like, on the left-hand side picture, they will say, oh, that cannot be that exaggerated. Trust me, when you actually go to Beijing and Shanghai, all these first-tier cities, everyone is on their phone. They're not even aware of the gap in front of between the subway and the platform. I saw a couple times that people actually fell into it. So dangerous. But as you can see here, they emphasize three things in their way of interact with e-commerce. Time and space as one, and secondly is personal choice, and third is convenience. So if they want to shop, if they want to look at e-commerce, it has to be instinct. Like that, just like when you turn on your phone, when you click on a page. And also, they want to actively feel like, they make their personal choice. Hey, welcome to the illusion. In China, you never actually actively make your choice. And also, absolute convenience. What I mean by that is, once you make a purchase online, it doesn't matter if it's on your tablet, your computer, or even on your mobile phone, the product will be delivered to your home at your front door. You don't need to worry about carrying it, or if it's too heavy, go in the elevator, fight into the subway. You don't need to worry about it. Someone will give it to you. So we do have a hypothesis that if e-commerce dies in China, all the delivery service providers, they would die along, because they're actually earning a lot of business just from the e-commerce in China. Okay. So like what I was just saying, the Gen Y, they actually prefer much more private and personal, and then the individualistic shopping behaviors. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the image, it really shows that they prefer this kind of quietness, the space for themselves. And also, because of this space, mobile phone, tablets, and computer becomes indispensable because it's a tool to help them to create that space. Otherwise, they feel absolutely suffocated from that collective shopping hype. Have you ever been to China that in a very crowded, discounted day, like Boxing Day? Literally, my size, I drowned in it. I couldn't even find myself in it. So for them, creating that space to fulfill their personal wishes becomes really, really important. And they don't dare to lose that. But of course, there are many things that will actually have their downsides. So what can be the psychological downside for that? Just quickly, insert a little bit of advertisement of concept, and we are a bunch of psychologists work from different areas. So we look at the social phenomena, we look at the clinical and psychological changes for young people, we look at the culture study, we look at the linguistic as well. So for us, we are actually interested in knowing the downside as well. The downside of this personal e-commerce bubble is that because they prefer to spend so much time on their own, decreasing of their personal interaction with other people, they do go into shopping mall, not for shops, but more like catching up with friends, more using it as a social platform to meet up with people. Their sense of isolation and loneliness start to take place. And well, I think only in a couple months ago that we are actually allowing the second child policy. But before that, everyone was only allowed to have one. And so with this group of young people, the Gen Y, they practically grew up alone. So, and then grew up with the e-commerce. So with all this flood of information from all over the world, they're bombarded by it. So sometimes I do have respondents coming to tell us and sharing the things that, yes, it's interesting, I get to see the world, I'm exposed to different kind of information, it's fantastic, but I do feel a bit lost in all this information because they're not taught how to actually process all this information and implement them into their daily life in a pragmatic manner. Their parents are simply too busy earning money. So a sense of isolation and loneliness creates. And don't be surprised if you heard any of the apps that become really popular in China, that people actually put their phone in front of them and seeing people to eat. Are you guys aware of those kind of phenomena? Yes? No? Okay, welcome to China. Or even I think in Japan or Korea a little bit. They have this real-life app where people are actually just filming themselves in a real-time live stream, and they're just eating noodles. So you will find a lot of young kids. They're sitting at a fast chain, whatever, McDonald's, everything, and just looking at the mobile phone. You thought they were, watching some kind of video. But what happens? They're watching someone else to eat. And so we actually did some interview on that regarding understanding psychological drivers. And then they were saying that, oh yeah, being able to see someone eating with you, you don't feel as lonely. How sad, right? But yeah, that's just a further tangible example for that. Okay, I think enough about the general findings and the situation in China. And what do we do as a concept BAM qualitative, in-depth psychological qualitative researcher? And we do a lot of accompany in-depth survey sessions, interviews when it comes to e-commerce. Because like what the previous presenter was saying, you never really know what are the real answers, right? Well, someone's using the internet, yes, but you have got a husband's hand in the way and helping to click and purchase and buy. So we just want to make sure, of course, the Gen Y is much more independent, and they're simply too young to marry, but you never know in China. Basically, they force you to get married when you're 22. And so we actually sit along with a bunch of young kids, and then when I say young kids, they're Gen Y, and then we're trying to understand how do they surf on their net. So we give them a task to do. For example, what are the most recent items or products they intended to buy? And then ask them to just do whatever they do in usual manners, not feeling someone. And that's why my research consultant, he's got a very low presence. He always feels like he is invisible. He just observes. And then we will ask them to describe in great details what they see when they actually go online and even on their mobile phone, how they feel about it. So what catches attention and what is kind of being ignored. And of course, I'm sure that online we have a lot of analytical tools that help you to understand all the clicks, all the success purchase rates, how many comments you actually leave on it. But what we do is understand the why. And I'm aware that we have a lot of psychologists, here today with us, so I'm not going to brag about psychology. But what happened is, we as in-depth psychological researcher, we really trying to understand what emotions drive them. So what are the motivation intentions that are important to them? And also, what are the intentions that are relevant? So what are their psychological reality based on all these angles that help them to interact with this physical and virtual reality? So that's the picture we're trying to create for our clients and try to educate them to understand better from a very different psychological perspective by using a lot of psychological analytical skills. And usually we have 4 big research topics, and then that will be circumstances. Oh, that one's crook. And we have intentions and process and experience. So when we explore a bit more about the circumstances, what we aim to do is really trying to understand the general mood and need state for this young group of consumers. And trust me, they're not afraid of showing them. They are quite ecocentric, to some extent. And another thing is, through these circumstances, we're trying to understand their knowledge of the categories. And sometimes they know more, and we are being educated as researchers as well. And we're doing the intention research topics. We're trying to gain an understanding of their general purchase interest, and also the position in the sales funnel. So inspiration, orientations, and finally the decisions. We're trying to understand how they work and how they process. And of course, process is always very important for in-depth psychologists to understand. Without a process, you don't have the whole story. So we actually aim to explore the circular process, the purchase process. Circular, I will explain a little bit more, but what does that mean and how it's actually formed? And also the consideration of all other relevant influencing factors. So what can possibly happen when they're actually making their decisions? Everything is possible in China. Everyone trying to say something about what you do. Everyone's looking. Trust me, several times I caught a guy just looking at my phone because he's taller. Okay, so, and last but not least, it's their experience, because we need the story. We really need to have the tangible content for the story plot. Is that we also help ourselves to understand the extended customer journey and the touch points analysis in the environment of e-commerce. And that is very important for us and also for clients to get a better understanding. Okay, I didn't create this model. Dirk did. It's way too complicated. And I'm sorry to confront you with this model. But what we are trying to present and highlight in this model is that we are trying to understand what can be the possible psychological mechanism that might have an effect and impact on someone's purchase decisions. In this case, in particular, the Gen Y. So what we have noticed that they always start off with this inspiration, imagination kind of process, and then they build a set of impression on that, and later they do their purchase decisions. But what's quite interesting is that we always, initially we assume that it's a step-by-step process. Or you fantasize about it, and then you're screaming around, and then later you do the transacting. But what comes out as a surprise is, no, they don't do that. They often show hesitation when they have to make the final decisions, and somehow they always go back to their first stage where they want to feel inspired. So instead of going through more like a funnel step-by-step process, it's actually a circle. And that is actually quite fascinating, and we were like, wow, that's interesting. It's just circling, and that's sort of what I meant by the circling process in the previous page. Let me give you a little bit more concrete example. And are you guys aware of Taobao.com? Heard about the name before? Have you guys ever used it before? Of course, they only have the Chinese version. I'm sorry. And and that's why we couldn't find any of the snapshot of the English version, because they simply don't have the English version. I think they do it deliberately. And I've got some expat friends that return to their home countries after staying in China for a couple of years. And one thing they miss the most in China is Taobao. Not everything else, because actually they can get a Chinese friend to purchase so many items on Taobao. And so they couldn't do that in the rest of the world. Oh, going back to that one. And as you can see, the UI is very, very interactive and is very intuitive. It's not complicated. It shows you all the clicks and percentage and also the success rate of purchase and exchange goods. And now we're using Taobao and trying to just, furthermore, to further illustrate the different pathway of shopping. Like I said, it's a circular process. And we have the inspirational on one side of the tension, and on the right side of tension, we have the aim to go. So on this little space, we'll put in 4 pathways that kind of represent 4 different moods. And then on the inspirational side, we have the fantasizing, exploration, and discovery. I think the words are quite self-explanatory, but I will show you some images later. And then on the right-hand side, the aim to go is much more specific, pragmatic, and search and price check. So it's pretty much like a checklist. So in between that sort of floating around, it's about social commerce. So when I say social commerce, actually involves a kind of social comments and little society. And then strolling through your own personal mall, what does that mean? Let me surprise you. Okay, fantasizing and exploration and discovery. I'm not sure if it's clear enough for you to see the words, but I asked people to actually play on their phone, especially on Taobao app, when we interview them. Initially, when they want to understand what's happening, the current trend, what's new in a fashion sense, they just immediately click on the home page. So have a lot of different information about fashions, about items, about jewelry, about different kind of thing that is the hit at the moment. And then later, they do have one thing that it's, okay, yeah, let me just look at it too. It's about what is new in the media. So they have say, oh, what kind of actress they're actually dressing up like this, like that. So I think that we can actually copy it. And you are right, they're copying it too. And then also, they have people that are like a very hit blogger that can actually share what they have bought from Taobao and then put it online, more like Instagram, but in a 9-picture like collage. And that helps them to do a lot of fantasizing, personal wishes, and think about what they can actually wear for the next season or how they combine their different style. And you have a 24/7 online customer service. People asking, are they all automatic kind of robot voice? Not necessarily. Well, we lack a lot of things in China, but we don't lack of human beings. Okay, pragmatic search and price check. It's pretty much me. I think it's the age thing. When you're reaching about 35, you don't go fantasizing too often, too much anymore. So we have, in Taobao, we have a very good, strong categorization in the website. So you can choose your, for example, for this one is shoes. You can choose as a second-handed. You can choose your size. You can choose different brands. You can even choose the color. Anything you can think about, you can choose from it. You just click on a different section, and all of a sudden, it gives you the research you want. So pretty much, it's a checklist on the website. You do it instantly. You find what you want. But at the same time, the search engine will help you recall all the footprints and make sure the next time when you go in, they will give you some suggestion. And in that regards, that sort of brings to our next mood, and that will be strolling through your personal haul. Okay, that's a snapshot from the mobile Taobao because they're actually more popular than the website one because everyone's carrying their phone pretty much gel onto their hands. That on the left-hand side, you can see you can choose your country. So you can choose either you are in mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau, Malaysia, Singapore, or every else of the world. And you can actually specifically personalize that location to your liking. And then in the middle one, we have our little secretary. And the little bee, that's a little secretary. And also you can exchange some of the currency over there. You have the footprint, and you have the blogger or the shops that you're interested in. And also you have your selected items and selected content, which means some fashion articles or whatever articles that might interest you. And also you have different payment methods, and also the record of your payment, and also the delivery services. Track everything. One world is actually in your hand. And I didn't actually snapshot for more because there are a lot more underneath that you can do with it. And then they have your Q&A session, what's popular. I mean, I'm 160 centimeter tall, and what kind of pants that would suit me to make me look like have a longer legs. Something like that. And then with this one, with the one that on my right-hand side, it also have, content, items, shops, my category, everything, and also based on what you have choose, they have more suggestions. Wow, talking a suggestion, we are very good at it. So you see, at least for that one, I haven't actually seen very often in other kind of e-commerce platform like eBay or Amazon. It's not happening. So that's why, once again, we are not just good at copying, we are good at creating and reinventing in a very intuitive and creative way. Okay, of course, as much as the Chinese young gen, they try to get away from all this crowd and collective hype, the social influence still in touch thing. So the social commerce is still very important because they still check comments. They still check the Q&As. And they still check, okay, on the left-hand side, it's about, okay, within 2,000 yuan, what kind of shoes would be suitable for student shoes? So they have a lot of answer on that, a lot of suggestions, even for brands. So you see the interaction is actually taking place in this kind of space and container. And also, in the middle one, after each purchase, people will write down their comments and say how they feel about it and take pictures of them. And sometimes the picture is quite scary, yeah? You find a man that actually wearing a woman's dress and post on it and say, yeah, the material is very stretchy. I tried to not so scare you, so I didn't put it here. And then on the right-hand side, it's, you see we show the number of the purchase and also how many people like it. So in that way, that actually provides Gen Y to make up their mind and let them know how popular this item is with similar people or similar taste. But what happened is, because the virtual world is so complicated in China, it's getting really messy at the moment. So we have this army, it's so-called water army. Do you guys know what water army means? It means like an army who actually are paid to write good and bad comments by the shop owner. And this young gen, like this young Gen Y, believe it or not, they develop a superpower to distinguish and examine what are the authentic comments. So they'll say, oh, if someone buys it immediately, they write something because they can track the record of purchase, that must be fake. Or if it's too perfect, it must be fake. So they were telling us all these detective skills they develop over the comments. It's amazing. Okay, going through everything about e-commerce and what's happening over there, and I hope it gives a good picture of everyone sitting here about China. It's an interesting place, it's mysterious, it's big, it's huge, you can lost in the sea, but there is a lot of potential and possibilities happening. So what we do as Concept M qualitative psychological researcher, there are some specific advantage of what we do on the e-commerce platform. For example, we can actually provide more holistic understanding of the e-commerce shopping experience and e-commerce trends, especially in China. And also, it's very culturally specific and real-time cultural observation. I told some of the colleagues I met here, I actually own a cafe in Beijing. Trust me, it's my field work. They never know I'm observing, but I always do. And also, there are we help them to develop a specific way of consumer immersion to trying to understand the direction and movement instead of just tracking about their attraction, what attracts them. We're really trying to understand the why. We're trying to understand their mental pictures, the symbols, the drivers, the motivations, the insights. That's what we need to have and what we want to provide. And also, we gain a deep insights and valuable impulses for UX design and business models, especially related to Chinese consumers. When I was previously mentioned about my little assistant, there's a bee. It's in Chinese called 小蜜. That means a little sweet assistant. So even with a little tiny information about the linguistic, it's very interesting. You need to fine-tune your language that actually click and trigger with your target consumers. And we often do some typical types of projects. And first of all, developing e-commerce and social commerce strategies. No surprise, I think a lot of people are doing that, but we do that more with psychological insights, the deep one too. And also supporting product brands in the e-commerce space, where to invest, how to position, what triggers, and what are the culturally relevant, and how to address it in their particular own languages, the e-commerce language. Last but not least, it's optimizing the e-retail experience for specific shops that have been actually already implemented in Taobao. So I think that's it for my presentation today, and I'm hopeful that you guys have a bit more understanding about Chinese e-commerce space.